I want to introduce Freddie Molina. He is a financial coach with Sparkpoint, and we just think this is a great opportunity to bring Sparkpoint and this program to all of you, all of the trainings that we're having around financial issues. We're asking Freddie to come or one of his colleagues to talk about their program. So Freddie, if you wanted to go ahead and share your screen and let us know a little bit more about your program, that'd be great.
Sure, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Freddie Molina. I am a SparkPoint Financial Coach with City of Fremont's Human Services Department. Can you all see my screen here?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So again, I want to thank you. I'll be introducing you or familiarizing you with the City of Fremont's Fremont Family Resource Center. But ultimately, my goal is to introduce you to a new, free, exciting for me financial resource that's available for all Alameda County residents. So I'll start off by telling you about the Fremont Family Resource Center if you're not familiar with it. Located in Fremont, the Fremont Family Resource Center co-locates 20 plus agencies from the state, the county, the city, and also nonprofits. It's basically a one-stop shop. It's a welcoming place where families are provided quality services and are encouraged to build on their strengths to help themselves and others. The Family Resource Center has a core team, and this core team leads the collaborative service integration at the Fremont Family Resource Center. And our core team ultimately provides family support services. The Family Resource Center is a go-to place for a multitude of services and information assisting individuals and families. Whether it's housing, employment, mental health, immigration, childcare, rehabilitation, or benefits assistance, you'll find it all conveniently located at the Fremont Family Resource Center. And through the FRC's Welcome Center, families are supported in over 5 languages. The Fremont Family Resource Center's support services includes family support coordination, safety net programs, mental health therapy for adults, including those on CalWorks, and Sparkpoint. Sparkpoint's financial services, it's basically the program that assists families in building assets and becoming more economically self-sufficient. The program offers financial education, one-on-one coaching, credit repair, free tax filings through our volunteer tax assistance programs, also known as VITA. During the pandemic, we've been a beacon of support for local families, offering grab-and-go food distribution services, cleaning supplies, diapers, and personal protective equipment. So here, as part of the Fremont Family Resource Center, the FRC recently partnered with the International Rescue Committee through CFE Fund in providing phone-based financial navigation services at no cost to all Alameda County residents through the Financial Navigator program. Financial Navigators provide 30 to 40-minute phone sessions to help clients manage financial challenges and identify the best course of action to meet their financial needs. Financial Navigators provide appropriate referrals to services and programs to address those needs. As previously mentioned, these sessions are absolutely free. All the client needs to do is complete an interest form online, and you can access that interest form here by taking a picture of the QR code there, or if you can write down the address that you see there, finnav.org/Alameda, or you can simply call the phone number 510-574-2000, and someone can actually help you complete an interest form online. A client must have a working phone number and email, as they will be sent a call summary at the end of the session with the list of all the resources that were covered. What happens during the session? A financial navigator will ask questions about the community members' concerns. Mostly, they'll say, what are your top concerns? And so they'll provide appropriate resources from rental assistance to food insecurity, unemployment resources, managing debt, and more. This is where you'll also find a resource like the Sparkpoint program. The Financial Navigator will use both a local and a national resource toolkit to identify the appropriate referrals. Unlike a financial coach who can provide advice and help a client create a personalized financial plan, a Financial Navigator simply provides I&R services. They inform and they refer. And although someone, including ourselves, may feel like, we might have everything that we need from a financial standpoint, I want to encourage you all to please take advantage of this free financial resource and speak with a financial navigator. It's very, very, very important to understand where to go and what to do when emergencies happen, right? Like this pandemic, for example, a huge crisis, one of probably the biggest financial emergencies that you can come across. And if we can prepare ourselves for something like that, we can give ourselves an opportunity to get further ahead, right? Be informed it's really what my takeaway here is from that. So with that, I introduce you to the Financial Navigator program, and that'll be it. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Freddie. We really appreciate you being here for us during these trainings. We think it's a great service, and we're happy to let people know what's happening. And I did put a link in the chat, so if you're interested in that, folks, you can make a copy of the chat and use that link.
Thank you.
Yeah, so next, I'm so glad to have back with us Gina DeGusto, who is a senior attorney at HERA, and she's a graduate of Harvard Law School. Prior to joining HERA in 2013, Gina provided advice on landlord-tenant issues at a local legal services program. She completed a fellowship at the Superior Court in Alameda County and spent 2 years representing residents of publicly subsidized housing before local housing authorities. Gina was selected to the California Super Lawyers Rising Stars list in 2016 to 18 for her work in consumer law. The Rising Stars list is selected by peer lawyers and recognizes no more than 2.5% of up-and-coming attorneys in each state. At HERA, Gina works on unfair debt collection, wrongful credit reporting, and mortgage and foreclosure-related issues on behalf of Californians in need. Gina also brings significant litigation experience with expertise addressing abuses by homeowners associations. So, boy, I'm so glad you're here, Gina. Thank you so much for being with us today. And we'll look forward to this presentation. And I will be happy to monitor the chat. And if questions come up, people can raise their hands and we'll try to get your questions answered. If they're too individual, I might suggest that you call HERA directly, but we'll do our best to get to as many of the questions as possible. Take it away, Gina. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm actually going to do video for a little while because I find that it's just nice to put a face to who's presenting. So good morning, everybody. I'm sure that some of you have participated in trainings in the past, and I wish we could all be in the same room together because I get a lot of positive energy when I'm there with you all. But we're gonna try and recreate as much of that as possible this morning. So before we start, a few things I'd like to ask of everybody is, if you don't have it in front of you, please grab a piece of paper and a pen. There's going to be a few times today where I'm going to ask you to brainstorm for yourself. And I think that's just helpful in the brainstorming process. And then the other thing is that I am going to pose a few questions out there. So I'm going to need some brave participants this morning who are going to interact and answer questions. And so when the time comes, if we're trying to engage in a discussion and I'm asking a question and you want to participate, please click on the raised hand function on your Zoom. Let us know if you're not quite sure where that is in the chat. Raise your hand and then we will call on whoever has their hand raised, and you can unmute yourself and then speak out at that time. So we'll try and get the feel of us all being in the room together as much as possible, and bear with me. But I really am happy to have all of you participating today. And so with that, I'd like to start and just for those of you who haven't sat through a training with HERA before, to give you a little background. So we are a legal nonprofit. We're based out of downtown Oakland, and we focus on consumer issues. So effectively what that means is if you have some type of financial issue, debt or credit, and there's a legal component to it. Usually that's something we work on. So we do a lot of debt collection questions, credit repair, credit reporting issues, identity theft. We have people who focus on student loans or auto loans or medical debt, all sorts of things. And, you know, we are here. Everybody in the office is a lawyer. We have a few support staff that help with our intake, but you know, the majority of the staff are lawyers, and we provide our legal services for free. The last slide in my presentation today will give you a summary of the types of services we provide. Feel free to reach out if you want some individual one-on-one counseling for yourself, or if you want to share our information. And so, you know, sometimes people, they see our organization, and they think, oh, they're just, you know, lawyers and they're there to solve that particular legal issue. But at our office, we really try to look at the bigger picture of what's going on for a client, because what we have learned over many years is that, you know, you can solve one problem, but it may be related to several other things. And so in this mindset of trying to get the bigger picture of what's going on in our clients' lives and not just solve one problem, that trying to address the bigger picture issues is also just understanding our clients and trying to understand how they think and what's driving them in their financial decisions, and helping our clients explore that for themselves. And hopefully today that's part of what we're going to be doing with all of you, so that you can think in a reflective way, and maybe make decisions or informed decisions that you might not have really done before, or made them in a certain way, because now you understand a little bit more about how you tick. So that's what we're doing here today. So if it doesn't seem like we're talking about legal issues, we're not really talking about the law today. There's many other presentations that are coming down the pipeline, but we want to kick off this series just talking about what are your values, what makes you make certain decisions when it comes to money. All right, let's move through. So when I say the word money, if you hear someone say the word money, think about what are the first three words that come to mind? Are they positive? Is it stress inducing? Share in the chat, what are some of the things that come to your mind when you hear the word money? I will say, most of the people that show up in my office, they say it's stressful, it's negative, there's a pressure to it. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot, bills and not enough and panic. Yeah, that's all
That's what we're getting.
all a lot of what we're feeling. That's very common. This is what's coming through in our office as well. And so one of the things that I like to tell people is, especially for those folks who come in, a lot of times they're not only stressed, but for some reason, a lot of people feel shame or embarrassment about having to talk to someone about their finances, or they feel the need that they need to explain to me why they're in a particular situation. And what I always say, I have a standard line, which is, it's not my job to judge. My job is to help folks understand what's going on, understand what their options are for addressing whatever issue they're having, and helping them to come up with a path to move forward. Very similar to a general financial coach. And then HERA, because we're attorneys, we have the extra layer of just also knowing what your rights are, what legal remedies there might be. And so I just want to put it out there. Yes, money tends to be very stressful for people, but we're not judging here today. We're just understanding where we're coming from when we're making these decisions. And you really should stop and think, okay, why is it that I feel this money? Why is it oftentimes, do I perceive it as a negative thing? Have you ever considered why these associations are popping up? So to that point, what we're going to do is start off the presentation today. We're going to talk about values, what they are, why they're important, and how they influence our financial decisions. think there's a little lag on my screen, so bear with me here. There we go. So what are values? These are the people, the things, and the places that are most important to you. They help you shape and prioritize how you're going to spend your time and money. So your values are really critical and have a huge impact on your financial decisions. And so when we think, okay, well, what contributes to how our values get formed? They have a huge importance in our financial decisions, but what actually helps form these values? And often what you'll find is financial beliefs are often, or behaviors are often tied to how your parents or a caregiver that you grew up with, how they handled money or how they view money. That is a huge contributor in how you're forming your own values. I think about, I have, in my own life, I was thinking about what kind of messages I would get about money. And I was thinking about this story that my dad had once said. He grew up in a household where it was a single mom, but his grandmother also lived in the household. And his grandmother, he used to joke, she used to go around the house and collect everybody's old tennis shoes. She would cut out the back of the heel and she would use them as slippers. And he always thought it was amusing until she explained to him that she lived during the Great Depression and resources were scarce. She came from the scarcity mentality where you used everything till its very bitter end. And so then my dad, as he got older, particularly when it came to shoes, he would use them until they were completely worn out. And now I was thinking about this, my husband kind of makes fun of me. I will use shoes until they practically have holes in them. And that's because the way I grew up, there were certain resources, you had this scarcity mentality and you used something until the very bitter end. And so for me, I was like, okay, well, a big part of my value and how I see objects is from this scarcity mentality that it kind of inherited from my family. Thinking about it that way, what are some of the other things that you can think of that have helped to form your values? So I want everybody to take a second, think, what are some of the other influences in your life that have created values? And then let's talk about it. And if you want to raise the hand function or put it in the chat so that we can discuss it.
Yeah, if you'd like to share your comment, we'll be happy to unmute you. Just raise your hand and we'll click to be able to, but people are adding some great things.
Growing up, not wasting food, periods of
Yeah.
economic distress. I'll say another example of something other than family. If you belong to a community of faith or a particular school, that would have an influence on the values. Can anybody think of anything else that might have influenced their values? So someone said, we're always told saving is important. So maybe that could be a community influence, not just from family, but the community where you were raised, where you grew up, instilled specific values. Yep.
I grew up in a religious family and there was tithing where you gave 10% of your income to the church.
Yep. So these are all community, friends, your culture. Many cultures have different approaches to the way that money is seen. Some cultures, it's, everybody works together and the resources are a community resource. So it should, think about what you have been through, your workplace, even the media that you grew up watching or that you had around you when you grew up. These are all things that have influenced your values and in turn will impact your financial decisions. And when you recognize these connections, it's a very good first step in either developing new financial habits or forming the financial habits, holding on to the ones that you find helpful or restructuring, the way you think about things when you recognize what's motivating it. Okay. So given, this idea of like what's been influencing me, my family, my community, my church, for yourself, I would like everybody to take a few minutes and I want you to answer the next 3 questions. So make a short list. What are the people, the things, and the places that matter to you? Maybe pick the top 3 or top 5. What values might this represent? And how do you think these values affect the way that you manage your financial resources? So, for example, a good example would be someone might say, I value my education or my diploma. And I'd say, okay, well, what does that represent for you? For some people, it's a social recognition or a status thing. For some people, it is the value of independence or having options. And then I say, okay, well, what do you think these values affect in the way that you manage your financial resources? And they may say, well, I invest in education, or, I want to pass it on to my kids, or, I've put money, I think it's worth taking out student loans in order to have the education. So think through, what are the things that are important to you? Think about what values they might represent, and then how it might impact your financial, the way you manage your financial resources. So take a few minutes and think about this.
I feel like we should have some music playing or something.
I would sing, but I have a terrible voice.
No.
So I'm seeing a few things in the chat, and that's fine. If you don't want to raise your hand and speak out, I'm going to read out some of the things that are starting to come through the chat. So someone said, I value my education because it helped me have the career I support myself with. That's a great example. I know another example I've heard before is some people really value their home space because for them it means comfort or personal space, or it's a sanctuary. And so for them, maybe they spend more of their resources on fixing up that particular space, making it feel even more comfortable, especially now in the pandemic. I'm sure many of you can relate to that because a lot of us are stuck at home more and more. And so we pay attention to our surroundings.
Right. And Tanya has her hand raised.
Okay.
Can you go ahead and go ahead?
Yeah, good morning.
Good
One of
morning.
the things that I value since I've gotten older is family and generational wealth, realizing how important that is in terms of thinking of the future and making sure that those after me will have options, because having options is also a value. And then also health, and that has influenced where I've decided to spend my money, like what I think is important, in terms of having good health and making sure that there's something left for others after me so that they can make choices as well.
Awesome. That's excellent. Thank you so much for your contribution. Yeah, in terms of health, definitely, but especially, that really resonated with me about the generational wealth, because that is a huge influence. When I have clients who come in, we'll talk about foreclosure prevention, and they say, well, we have multiple generations in this home. Your home is one of the main ways that you can pass on generational wealth. And so it's a driving force for some of the decisions they're making in terms of their other finances or what they want to get out of the session with me. And so that's definitely a driving force for a lot of folks. So thank you. I see some others. I value my education and my family, my children, my career. I was able to support my children and just instill in them the importance of education to have better options and opportunities. Some people say they didn't learn about generational wealth until they're in their 30s. I think that's Freddie. I wish I learned sooner in life. So it helps when you really think, okay, well, what do I value? What's important to me? Because you realize, okay, well, if generational wealth is my motivating factor, then you do care about passing on certain assets. Or if education is your motivating factor, then you're maybe using your resources for student loans or schooling, or making that opportunity available to your kids. Or if health is your value, then maybe you are wanting to spend on health equipment or nutrition, because for example, if you want to buy certain quality food, then that may take resources. So it's just getting you to think about, okay, what's important to me and how does that impact my decisions? So here's an example. We're going to look at this together. Here is a scenario. Let's say that this couple walks into my office and there's, Valentina and Isaiah, and they say, okay, well, we've received our tax refund and we can't agree on how we're going to use it. So Valentina, so she put herself through college. She was working 30 hours a week on top of a full course load. She has some student loans and her mother's struggling to make ends meet. So she wants to use the tax return to give to her mother as a security deposit to move into a new to a new apartment. And she wants to use the rest to continue to pay down her student loan debt. Now, Isaiah, her partner, says, well, his parents helped him with college expenses with the money that they saved over the years. And so he graduated with minimal loans and paid them in full a few years before he and Valentina met. And he would like to use most of their tax refund to go into savings accounts that they set up for their 3 children. And he wants to use the rest to take a family vacation. And he wants to spend quality time with his family. So I'm going to ask you, if these 2 individuals were sitting in front of you, what would you say are some of the values that are influencing Valentina? And what are some of the values that you say are influencing Isaiah? So one of the things that I'll start and kick it off. So one of the values that might be influencing Valentina is she's probably influenced by family. She's thinking about her mom and her mom's well-being. So family is important to her. And you could also say that family and quality time with family is also important to Isaiah. Yep. So Maureen, I see family for both. He has experience with value of savings and she has experience with wanting to help her mom. Yep. So for Valentina, not only is family important, but maybe showing gratitude to her mom, taking care of her mom as thanks. For Valentina, maybe it's also about independence and paying down her own debt. She had to work through college. She didn't necessarily come from a place where she had the privilege of having family resources to get her through. And so maybe part of this is she had to be independent to get through school. And she sees this as furthering her value of independence by using what resources they have to continue to pay down her student debt. Whereas Isaiah, clearly, also family. Education is still important to Isaiah because you can see he's wanting to set aside funds for his kids, and providing opportunities for his children is a value that Isaiah is displaying. And not surprisingly, well, if his parents saved money and provided it to him, then maybe that's a value that he inherited where he now wants to pass it on to his kids. So you can see you have 2 people. There's no right or wrong way to spend this money, but their values are kind of dictating how they want to spend that money. So I would say if they came to you and they said, okay, here are my motivations. We're trying to figure out what to do with this money. And they said, what should we do? What is it that you would tell them to do? What types of advice would you give them? Any brave takers?
Feel free to raise your hand and can unmute you.
I will say I once had someone make the suggestion that they would tell them to call a family meeting and they would discuss it together and come to a consensus on how they wanted to spend the money. And I asked them why what kind of encouraged that approach. And they said, well, clearly this couple, they both value family. So why not come to a consensus as a family? So we have someone who's saying, I would point out that they both have similar values. Yep.
And we have Simone who's got her hand up. Simone, you want to go ahead?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The first thing I would do is let the 2 of them sit down and have a meeting. As far as the mom is concerned, I understand the importance, but to me, I think they need to put a cap on how much they will spend on her, because family is important to me too. It's always been like that. But what I found out myself doing is all my money was going to family and none for me. And it's important for them to keep their family together as well. Maybe the vacation, maybe not a big one, maybe it's on a smaller level. But those are some of the things I would do.
So would you say, do you think that any of your own values are actually influencing how you view their situation and your advice that you're giving them?
Very much so. I'm a little bit of Valentina. My mother did struggle to put us through college. She taught us to save, but I never was taught how to save and the best way to save. And so, of course, I would want to help my mother, but then at the same time, I have to look in terms of my family as well, in terms of, if I'm going to help my mother, okay, at what point, I'm not going to say is enough because I'm going to always help my mother, but at what point um, do I not put my mom before my family? And it's a tough decision, but at some point, we would have to just come to some kind of consensus.
Great.
But the
Thank
decision,
you.
me and my husband, though.
Thank you. Thank you for your input. So, yeah, not only do, two individuals can see how they want to spend money, it's impacted by their values, but also how we see the situation is impacted by our own values. And so I saw another suggestion in the chat, split things 50-50. Half the money gets to go and be spent how Valentina wants to spend it, half how Isaiah wants to spend it. And my point is not, there's not a wrong answer in how to spend the money. This is a conversation, just as you all pointed out, that needs to happen, and they'll come up with arrangement that works for them, that honors their values. But the point is, the way that you value things not only impacts your choices, it impacts the advice you're giving to others. So if you're working with families, keep that in mind, how you might approach something or see the situation. It's also colored by your own perspective. So just be aware of these things when you're talking to people about money, when you're analyzing your own financial decisions. Okay. Now, generally, at the end of the day, I think most people are the most satisfied when their behavior is aligned with their values. So understanding your core values can help you to set realistic and achievable goals. It can help you make spending decisions that help you meet your goals. And the reason for all of this, why it's more satisfying, why it helps with your goals, is because you're more likely to keep working towards a goal that brings you closer to the life that you want to live or the objectives that you set out for yourself. As people say, it's kind of like the big point of it all. So we're going to talk about the next phase. We've talked about our values, but let's focus on goals now, how it's related. So specifically, what are goals? How do you use them to prioritize how you're going to use your money? Because at the end of the day, you want to be focusing on spending on those things that helps you meet your goals. I've had many clients come into my office and they say, here's my credit report. What should I do? And I say, okay, well, what is it that you're hoping to do? What are your goals? Are you coming to me and asking me this question because you want to improve your credit? Are you coming to me and asking me because you see stuff that's wrong and you want to fix it? Are you trying to improve your credit so that you can take out a loan and become a homeowner? Are you just trying to deal with your debts because you're feeling frustrated or stressed because of the weight and the burden that's putting on you? And so I tell people, okay, what is it that you're looking to get out of this? And that helps answer the question. So if clients come to me and they say, what should I do? Just like what we're doing today, I'm trying to get at, okay, what is it? What are your goals? What do you see for yourself? I can tell you the strategy to use for whatever goal that you're setting out, but you really need to think about what you want for yourself first and foremost. So if in this, vein, sit there and think, okay, what do you want your life to look like? What do you want your life to feel like in the next few months? What about the next few years, 10 years, 20 years? Think, what is it that I envision for myself? Where do I want to be? And if you stop and think about this, these ideas for your future, these are your hopes and your dreams. These are goals. They're your desired results of what you want for yourself. And setting goals helps you to prioritize your money to get to that point, to that end point that you see for yourself. And setting goals also helps you measure if you're on track, if you're getting there, if you're making progress. And that is really, really critical if at the end of the day, you want to make sure that your values are aligning with your behaviors, you want to see yourself moving forward to the place where you ultimately want to end up, you need the tools that are going to help you get from here's what I care about to executing it so that you reach the place where you want to be. So I am guessing that many of you have heard about SMART goals before. I don't know if I necessarily like the fact that they call them SMART goals, but all SMART stands for is it's an acronym. And what it means is to set goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic or relevant, and time bound. And so if, it's great to have goals, but if you want to have a stronger chance of actually achieving your goals, it really helps if you think about your goals in this structure. And by doing that, you're making it more possible for you to get where you want to go. So I tell people, all right, you have this goal. Now let's put this in the SMART framework. So first you start, okay, you want your goals to be specific. You want to make sure that they're focused. There's a tangible outcome. Define exactly what it is that you're looking to do. Because if you're not specific about what you want to accomplish, what your goals are, if you're too vague, it's almost like you're setting yourself up to fail, because if you're not specific about what you want, then how do you know if you've achieved it? And so the more specific you are with your goals, that's setting yourself up for success. The other thing is that it should be measurable. This is, you want to have a definition of success. How much might it take? How many, for example, how do you evaluate the achievement? How do you evaluate your progress? And so I'm going to give you an example on the next slide, but measurable means there needs to be either a dollar amount or maybe a time amount, something that you can look to that marks the achievement. The next thing is attainable. Is it realistic? Am I asking for something that's reasonable to achieve? If you are a little overzealous and you're not realistic with your goals, then sometimes you're preventing yourself from achieving anything because it's discouraging. If you always want to dream big, but you also want to set goals that are going to get you there. And so you want to be practical about it. Make sure it's attainable. Also relevant. So this gets back to our values. We've been thinking about what motivates us. Why do we feel the way we do about money? How do we make financial decisions? Well, part of making a goal is making sure that goal is relevant. Is it worthwhile? Does it align with your values? Because if a goal is not aligned with your values, then you're not as likely to carry through with that goal. And then finally, you want it to be time bound. There needs to be a target date, a deadline, something that should be based on what you do and not just your desires. You want to be realistic about the time frame to ensure you don't get discouraged, but there should be like an end point to your goal. So these are the questions. If you're trying to think, okay, I have a goal, here are the questions that you should be asking yourself. If you want to turn a regular goal into a SMART goal, here's what you should think. What do I want to do exactly? What do I want to accomplish precisely? How much of something, how much money, how much time is it going to take? How many of whatever that increment is? How will I know if I've met this goal? Is it reasonable? Are there going to be barriers that I'm going to need to overcome? A lot of times when I'm working with clients, sometimes there's legal barriers, and that's one of the things that we're working through to overcome to get to an end goal. But think about barriers. Do you have the resources that you need to accomplish the goal? So you also need to think about what's available to you. Is it relevant? Why is this important to me? Does it meet with my values? and then time bound. When am I going to reach this goal? So here's an example of what this looks like. If someone comes to me and we're working through something in our office. I have someone who says, I want to be free of credit card debt. And I say, okay, that's excellent, but it's a little vague. So what do we do about that? You say you want to be free of credit card debt. How do we turn this into a SMART goal? So the first thing I say is, all right, well, let's identify the specific credit cards that we're talking about. So I have a client and they lay out, okay, here are all my credit cards. And then they say, my goal is to pay off these 3 cards, because if I can pay off these 3 cards, then I will feel like I am free of this debt. Say, great. So pick specific cards that you were going to pay. Then I would say, all right, let's make this measurable. How much money do you owe on all of this? So we write out, okay, you owe this much on this card, and this card. Now we have a measurement. Now we know a dollar amount of how much it's going to take. Then I say, okay, let's make this attainable. Let's make it possible. So how much money do you think that you can spare from your budget to make these extra payments? If you want to pay down the debt, how much can you set aside every month in order to make that happen? So now we have, one, is it reasonable? Can I swing, $100, or maybe it's just $20? And we confirm that we have the resources to do it. If I don't have any extra money in the month and everything goes towards groceries or housing or something, then maybe it's not reasonable to pay down all of these debts at this time. But if I do have a little bit of spare money that month, then I can apply it. So now it's attainable. Number 4 is confirm that paying off these debts lines up with your values. You say, okay, well, why do you want to be free from debt? Is it because you want to relieve yourself of the pressure? You want the financial freedom? Is it because you know it will impact your credit? So make sure that when even something that sounds like everybody thinks, oh, I have to pay all my debts. And they think, well, that's just what you do. I always tell people, okay, well, think about why it is that you're wanting to pay these particular debts. Why is it that you're wanting to do this? And if it lines up with your values, fantastic. And then I say, okay, well, what is the end point? How do you know when you've reached your goal? And so in my example, this person had credit cards. There was $3,000 owed. This person thinks they can swing $100 a month. And so it will take them about 2.5 years if they make those $100 installments to pay off that debt. And so now we've gone from something where it's very general, I want to be free of credit card debt, to actually something very practical, because now we've thought about it in a constructive way. How much? What am I going to do about it? What are my resources? Does it align with my values? What's the end goal? And that is what I'm hoping that you all will start to get practice doing if you don't already do it. So let's do this. Take a minute. Everybody, think of at least one goal you have for yourself. And if you want to share this, it's fine. If you don't want to, that's okay. But I want everybody to take a minute. Think about a goal that you have for yourself, specifically a financial goal if you can. And I want you to turn it into a SMART goal. So using the questions that we've laid out, make your particular goal into a SMART goal. And then I'm going to ask a brave soul, somebody out there, to share with us what they might suggest to make one of their goals a SMART goal. Anyone brave out there want to take a stab at this? Or you can give me an example of a goal that you have if you're struggling with making it a SMART goal. If you want to talk it through, feel free to share that, and we can talk about how to turn that into a SMART goal as well.
Okay, we have Martha has her hand up. Thank you, Martha, and also Tammy. So let me start with Martha. I saw yours first, and then we'll go to Tammy.
Hello, this is Martha.
Hi, Martha.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I have a question. I have to say that I'm so grateful our company gave us some money, and so I was able to pay all my debts. I have 0 debts.
Great.
Yes. And so my goal is to save up at least 6 months for my emergency fund. And so I already have 4,000. So I'm struggling on how to set up my monthly amount that I could save up to get to the 20,000. And to think that it will take me a year is kind of scary. So I'm trying to, figure out how can I, spread this money and be able to save this. I mean, it's kind of big a month, 20,000 too, so that I can supply myself for at least 6 months.
Well, that's a great example. And it sounds like you're definitely got a lot of the elements that we're already looking for. So it sounds like your specific goal is to save up $20,000. So now we know, it's both specific because it's for a emergency fund, and it's also measurable because now we know how do you know when you've reached your goal? And it's when you reach the 20,000. I will say, just on a side note, you mentioned a concern about how long it's going to take. And I should say and remind people, some goals are short-term goals and they can take a couple weeks, but there are going to be goals that you have that are going to take months or even years. And don't let that discourage you or make you feel stressed about it. It's part of following the process and figuring out what's attainable and achievable for you. And so don't be discouraged if it's going to take a while. I mean, we all want things to happen as quickly as possible, but that is very common that there's a lot of goals that are going to take a while. So back to this example, so you have $20,000, it's measurable. And it sounds like one of your questions that you're struggling with is, okay, is this attainable? Is it possible? And so you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I set aside the funds in order to make that happen? And that's exactly what you should be doing, is what are the things that I need to do to overcome? How much can I swing to set aside every month? Maybe part of that question is, are there other ways to increase that money? So some people might say, are there savings accounts that I could use where there's interest occurring that can help increase the amount of money that's been set aside? So brainstorming whether or not it's feasible, that's exactly what you should be doing. Relevant, is it important to you? Well, it sounds like the value you have is security and stability, and which is probably what a lot of people are feeling right now during the pandemic. And so if that is one of your values, then it sounds like you're right on track, because saving a safety net would help with stability and emergencies. And then time bound is part, it sounds like that's kind of where you're trying to figure out how to make this happen. So first I would say figure out what's achievable, what you can set aside, where the money's going to come from, the logistics of that. And then that helps you think, okay, well, realistically, if I can set aside, I don't know, $1,000 every 3 months, what is it? How much time would it take me to reach that goal? Maybe it's more. So then you put a time bar on it, and that gives you an idea of how much time you're going to be investing in this. And also maybe you meet that goal faster than you thought, and that can be very encouraging as well. So that was a great example. Thank you for bringing that one up. Do we have anybody else? And then we had another hand.
Thank you for your answer.
Yes, we also have Tammy. Let's see, let me go ahead, Tammy.
Hi, mine was just a credit card that I just my goal is to pay it off and not use it anymore. And so it's just trying to pay at least what's on the statement as far as the 3-year payoff time. And for me, that credit card has been my generational, what was that, fortune or
Generational wealth.
Wealth. Being able to help my daughters with their children's needs, that they've had, is why I've used that credit card. And they've gotten, more capable, and their children are older. And so I'm not seeing the need for that anymore really at this point. And so that, for So that's for me, that's what I'm focused on right now.
So that would be, I think that's a great start. So then you'd ask yourself, okay, what do I want to accomplish? You already have that. You know what your current credit card is that you're looking at. You probably already know what the balance is. So you have an idea if it's measurable. Then you're going to want to figure out, is this attainable? Again, do I have the resources to set aside for this particular debt? Is it reasonable that I want to be setting aside this money? Do I have anything else that I have that's more important that I need to be setting aside the money for? Is it relevant? Why is it so important to you to be paying down that particular debt?
And what I forgot to say was that actually on that one is the interest also is, really kind of painful to see how much interest there is.
Yep. And so for you, it might be one of the reasons why it's important to you is that you're not paying extra resources that you have coming down the line towards interest, and you just want to be able to move that money elsewhere. That could be a motivating factor for you. That's usually one of the main reasons why people, when they're paying off credit cards, they focus on the higher interest rate cards first, because that means you're paying more fees and you're not necessarily getting any further benefit from that. And then time bound. So once you figured out, what you can swing, whether or not this is really something that you want to be paying down, give yourself a concrete goal. I want to pay this off in a year. I want to pay this off in a year and a half. Maybe you can swing it in a couple months. Give yourself some parameters so that you know if you're getting to where you want to go. That was a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy.
And then I see one more. So Patricia said, I want to build my credit score up. And so what I would say for that one is, okay, what exactly do you want to build it up to? Is there a specific number that you're shooting for? So that helps you be specific and making it measurable so that you know what you're aiming for. And then, is this something that's possible to do? So now you're going to have to figure out, okay, what are the things that I can do in order to boost my score? What factors are at play? This is actually a good primer, because one of our future presentations coming up soon is credit building and improving your credit. And so one of the things we'll be talking about there is, what things do you need to overcome? What things do you need to do that you can boost your score? So figuring out if it's attainable. Is it relevant to you? Why is it important to improve my score? What am I getting at it? Do I just care because I care to have good credit, which some people take just pride in having good credit? Do I care because I want better rates on loans I'm going to apply to? If it doesn't meet your values, maybe this isn't something you want to focus on. So think about why you're doing it. And then time bound. Again, I want to raise it by a certain amount within a certain amount of time. Now, sometimes you can't control exactly when you're going to get that raised score, because what many of you will learn if you participate in the credit training is that you can't dictate exactly how much your scores will change and how quickly, but try and make a goal for yourself. So that was another good example. Thank you for contributing, everybody. Okay. So what I hope is that you're using these tools in order to think about your goals, think them through. And, what I found some clients do is they go through the goals that are really important to them, and they map it out, and they even put it on a piece of paper, and they'll carry the paper around with them. And it helps them guide them, saying, okay, here's what I have mapped out for myself. Here's where I'm going with this. And they kind of use it as their mantra. And so I encourage you to think about your own goals and think about how you can continue to encourage yourselves to reach those goals, because I think you'll find that once you start practicing that particular skill set, the SMART goals, you'll find that things feel more feasible. And that's a big thing that clients come to me and they're feeling overwhelmed. And I think by honoring your values, having your actions line up with that, and then having the tools, laying it out, a path for yourself, that alleviates the stress the negativity that we feel about money, because now we're empowered. We feel like we have control over things. We have a plan in place. And I can't tell you how many times I don't really do anything for clients half the time. I'm just talking through a problem with them. But now that they've kind of identified the issues and they have a plan in place, they feel so much better. And they go, oh, they call me the next day. I slept so much better last night. And I go, well, that's fantastic. I didn't do much other than talk them through something, but it really does help shift how you're feeling about money, how you're feeling about your finances, and the viability of your future goals. So I really encourage you to do that. And then the last thing we're going to talk about, I do want to talk about external influences, because you can't think about your goals and your financial decisions in a vacuum. Your values do impact your decisions, and you can make it possible to reach your goals, taking those in mind and creating a path for yourself. But there are going to be outside factors that are going to influence your decisions. Sometimes you don't even realize they're influencing your decisions. Sometimes there's outside messages about money that you're not even thinking about, but they're impacting what you're doing. And so we're going to spend the last section of today's training just talking about what some of those outside influences are, and maybe how some tools or tricks that you all use, or maybe that I have for you, to deal with those external influences if they're not particularly helpful. So first I will say, think about what are some of the external influences that impact your choice about money. These aren't necessarily your values or, your own personal choices, but what are some of the things that might impact how you decide to spend your money that are outside, external forces? Any volunteers? Throw it in the chat or raise your hand. I'll give you one. What about media and what you're seeing in the media? What about if you're seeing some issue that's being highlighted on the news, and all of a sudden you decide to pay for a certain cause? That is an external force that's impacting my decision to spend money. I'm saying people who say emergencies. Yes, emergencies impact. Peer pressure, family and friends. Exactly what I think. Yep. I'm seeing a lot of good suggestions. A single income. So there's certain things that are impacting your ability to achieve your goals, these outside influences. Yes, all good things. Advertisements, media, peers, friends, influencers, especially today. I'm not particularly technologically savvy, but there's a lot of influencers now on YouTube and TikTok, and this is how they earn their money, and they make a lot of money, and they a lot of decisions that people are making. And so I would say, at some point, all of us, because I am exactly where all of you are, we've probably seen things or noticed what others have had. Maybe you've wanted to have that thing that you see, it influences you because you feel like you have to spend to either keep up with that particular influence or with that particular friend or a celebrity. I don't know. Maybe there was an advertisement that really drew you in, and they got us to want to spend our money in ways that we weren't even aware of consciously. And so what happens though is sometimes these outside influences, they get us to spend on impulse and kind of veer from our spending or savings plan and derail your efforts to achieve your goal. So I think the more you really think about outside influences and how they might be impacting your financial decisions, that that can really also help you to stay on track. So what I say is influences, they can be productive. You can have influences where they're encouraging either saving for a certain cause or using your money in a certain way, but there are also unproductive influences. I mean, the advertising agencies that are out there, they make billions of dollars trying to get people to buy certain products, not necessarily because they need it. I always joke with my husband because we'll be sitting there watching some program and a commercial will come on and it will be like a restaurant or something, and he will almost always I in my head think he's about to say that he wants that for dinner. And sure enough, he will turn to me and he will say, "Oh, that sounds so good for dinner." And I joke with him and I say, "And you are the reason this interaction is why advertisers spend millions of dollars, is because people see something and then they realize, okay, that's maybe something I want right now." And I do it too. I see something and I go, "Oh, I could really use that." And maybe it's not really what I need, or it's not aligned with my goals, but man, you got to think about what's the message being projected. So if it's not particularly productive to your goals, what I really ask of all of you is to identify what those unproductive outside influences are, and then think about strategies that you have or that you could use to either block these unproductive messages or external influences, or what strategies you have used that have been successful to resist spending money on things that are outside of your savings plan. So I'm going to give a couple of examples. I encourage you to either raise your hand or put it in the chat, some of the things that you all have done that have helped you to stay on track with your spending goals. But I'm going to give you a few examples. So the first one is just recognize that advertisers, there's a lot of things that they do to try and get you to spend money. Many advertisers will give either sales or discounts where there's like this false sense of urgency. You know, it's 40% off, but only today. Or you go into a shop and it's like, "Oh, we're doing this promotion, but it's only for today." Or you go to buy a car. "Well, I can give you this particular price, but only if you buy it right now. And you know, if you come back in a week, like, it's off the table." There's this sense of you have to buy right then and there, make the decision, make the commitment. And part of this, the reason advertisers do this is because they know if you stop and think about it and you weigh your options and you go through, does this meet with all my goals? Is this keeping me on track? You're probably not going to spend. So recognize when you're feeling this sense of urgency to take advantage of something, realize that advertisers do that for a reason. You know, great. Maybe the advertiser, maybe the store is offering 40% off for that day. Maybe the item that you're about to purchase, you could find at another store where it's not on sale, but it's still cheaper. But you wouldn't know that unless you did your homework and you double checked. Or maybe you're buying this item because it's on sale, but you don't really need it right then and there, or it's not lined up with what you want to do. But maybe the 40% off will come again down the line, maybe when you're ready, or maybe once you know you want to purchase something, then you go out and you find the discount. So be aware, these time sensitive, these false sense of urgency, these ads, you know, they're meant to get you off track a little bit. The other thing that you should be thinking about with advertisers or shopping is, what are the things that they're making it really easy for you to buy something so that you're not thinking about it. So a good example would be the reason why at grocery stores they have all of like the candy or like the hand sanitizer, all the little trinkets that are like waiting at the cash register. These are all things that, you know, they're right there. You kind of do an impulse buy, you're on your way out and you think, "Oh, maybe I want that." And they're banking on you quickly grabbing something that you didn't even go in there to get. And yet you're buying it because it's there, it's convenient, and you're not thinking about it, or you're not spending time weighing your options because you're just on your way checking out. So you just grab whatever's close to the register. Or another good example, if you're buying things online, is that a lot of stores or companies, they allow you to save your payment information online. And that's, you know, yeah, convenient. So you don't have to refill in your name and address and your payment information every time you want to buy something. But part of that convenience is also so you don't think about what you're buying. It speeds up the transaction. So if you're just click, 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 you know, checking your information is there, you haven't taken the time necessarily to process, is this something I really need? And so the more convenient features of some of our shopping experiences might be a way to get us off track. And so think about when you're shopping, either online or in a store, or if you're seeing an ad, like what are these advertisers, what are these stores doing that are getting me off track from what I really need? The next suggestion I have, and again, please chip in if you have suggestions of what things you do. But one of the things I tell people is, all right, notice when you find yourself making those impulse purchases or purchases that are not necessarily lined up with your ultimate goal. What are you doing? I can't tell you how many people in my personal life where, they're at home because of the pandemic and they're not able to go out and do things. And so they find themselves either in front of the television or in front of their computer, just online shopping out of boredom. And that is a privilege for a lot of people. Not everybody has the resources to be able to sit there and do that. But I say, well, what are you doing? What is causing you to buy? And one of the top responses is, well, I'm bored and I'm filling my time. And so they're spending, and it's not necessarily getting them anywhere, but they're doing it because they're tempted. It's a convenient thing that they're sitting there, and it's a way to fill their time. So I say, what are you doing? What activities are you engaging in when you find yourself making impulse purchases? Are you always on your computer? Is it off of a particular site? Are there certain social media posts that you're seeing that are tempting you? Do you get those mailers in your email that are like, oh, 30% off coupon from your favorite store? And you get those a lot. And so that's tempting you. So think about when you're about to make an impulse, what is it that you're doing in that moment? What is it that caused you to go down that chain of making that impulse buy? And you will find that there are probably some outside factors that you may want to rethink. Maybe canceling the subscription to certain stores so you're not constantly getting pinged with all the discounts. And then when you're ready to buy something, going out and proactively searching for a discount might be more helpful to you. Another thing that you could do in order to stay focused on your financial goals is, they say, to control your environment. I had a client where very accurately was like, well, this is like your financial diet. When you're trying to lose weight, you lock up the cookie cupboard and you're not allowing yourself to have access to it. And so then you limit your ability to go and eat the cookies that you don't want to. And she's like, all it is you're controlling the outside diet. So what's your social media diet like? Are you constantly taking in influencers? Are you constantly engaging with ads? Are you getting a lot of the mailers? What is it that you're doing that might be exposing you to some of these outside influences? And can you shut it off? Can you limit the sources of media? Can you limit the sources of information you're getting? If you have a friend who's always encouraging you to go out and splurge and spend your most recent paycheck, maybe that's the person that you don't necessarily want to hang out with around, the time of month when you have the money to blow. You don't want to be around someone who's going to encourage you to spend it all very quickly. So think about, controlling those aspects of your environment. The other thing is that, and another big one that a lot of people use is, if they're going to the grocery store, they will say, I'm going to make a list and I'm only allowed to get what's on the list. And if it's not on the list, I'm going to pretend like I do not see it in this store. And that helps some people I know, where it prevents them from going. Usually it's Target, not necessarily the grocery store, where they go and they buy a bunch of stuff that they didn't actually need. Usually, you walk past like the dollar section and you find yourself with a cart full of stuff you really didn't need and it's not helping you. And so sticking to a list can be very, very helpful for some people. So controlling your environment is another suggestion. And then furthermore, building in a pause. This one, I definitely think can be helpful if you're really trying to be mindful about your decisions, mindful about your values, mindful about where you're going with spending your money. And so if you force yourself to stop and think about things before you're purchasing, that can be extraordinarily helpful, So if you're buying something online, let it sit in your inbox or in the cart for a day. You know, you don't have to buy it right then and there. Give yourself time to think, okay, is this something I actually do really want? Is it, I'm going to use it for a specific purpose? Is it going to further a particular goal? And then maybe 24 hours later, you realize, you know, I'm not really into this particular item and I don't really need it. And that time that you gave to breathe and think about it was very helpful. The same thing can be said for if you're going shopping, you see an item, you're like, oh, I really like that, but I'm not sure. Don't immediately put it in your cart. Do a lap, do the rest of the shopping that you actually came there for. And then maybe at the end, you know, if you still want it and you've decided, okay, I thought it through a little bit more and I want it, then put it in the cart at the end of the trip. I have a suggestion we've had from Beth. It says, when my kids were little, we used to take a picture of something that they wanted or write it down on a piece of paper to purchase at another time when there was money to get something. That is fantastic, because one of the things that you should be thinking about is, all right, is this item part of my current goals? Have I already come up with a plan in order to pay with this item? If it's not already something that you've mapped out and it's not part of your current goal and you still think you want it, then take a picture. That's great. Take a picture or, you know, write it down and then map out a plan for how you're going to go ahead and get it, but at a later date, once you've thought it through and you've set out a SMART goal for it. So that's an excellent tip. Thank you, Beth. Two more. So I have one. This is the talk yourself out of it strategy. And I tend to use this one a lot. Hopefully I'm not looking too crazy in the grocery store when I'm sitting there talking to myself thinking, do I really need this? Is it worth it? And so, you know, stop and ask yourself questions. Is this worth it? Will I have to give something up for this in order to have it? Can I plan to set aside some money and maybe get this later? Can I create a savings goal for this? I do this a lot with my husband. You know, we both come from very different backgrounds in terms of how we were taught about money and what our priorities are, but we do have some common goals that we want to achieve. And so every time one of us is tempted to get something, we stop and we talk about it and go, okay, well, what do you want more? Do you want this thing that we both want, which is going to take us a while to earn and get? Or would you rather have this, you know, secondary item that you're currently desiring? And so, you know, we do that. Well, I want this thing that we've talked about more. And so we'll set this other thing aside and we'll find a goal for that. But first, let's focus on this primary goal that we have. So we do this in my household a lot. And then the last one is calculate the hours or days an item is worth. I think of this like when you're on the treadmill and you're like, okay, well, if I eat this piece of pizza, I'm going to be on this treadmill for 30 minutes because you're calculating how many calories you're going to burn off in that 30 minutes. The same thing is with spending money. So if I buy this item and it costs X number of dollars, you know, how much do I earn in an hour? Okay, this item cost me X number of hours of my time in order to earn it. And sometimes you realize, wow, it would take me a really long time in order to earn the money for that item. And you think, okay, maybe I don't want this. So I use that trick as well. Did we have any other suggestions in the chat box?
Yes, there were a couple of really good ones. Someone
Please.
said, if I'm emotional or hungry, I don't go shopping.
That's a good one. I've heard that one before. That is a good one.
Another person said, I totally put online things in a cart and then I leave the site. Oftentimes I forget that what I even wanted, whatever it was. That's another good idea.
That's excellent. Those are exactly the types of tricks that people use. So I encourage you to share in the chat box anything that really works for you, because part of this process is finding out what works for other people, testing it out. Some things work for you, some things don't. But that's all of this is just identifying outside influences and finding ways that we can deal with them so that we stay on track. Because once you've figured out what your values are and you've figured out a goal and you've gone through all the effort to strategize, you don't want to be taken away from all of that just based on an impulse. And the more you're aware of what's encouraging you to take an action that's not aligned with your values or with your goals, then you're less likely to do it. So thank you everybody for sharing. That was really fantastic. And so these are the 3 takeaways that I hope you get from this presentation, is really thinking, take the time. Please do go back and answer the questions. I know it's hard to do in a workshop environment, especially because we're not in person, and normally, we can brainstorm together and people can shout out their answers. But I really do hope that you take the time this morning, or maybe on the weekend when you have a little bit of time, to sit there and really think about your values and what they are, what they mean, how they influence your spending. I also I hope that you sit there and make out some goals for yourself and try practicing making SMART goals, because I think you will find just doing those 2 exercises will dramatically change how you're viewing your current financial situation and your outlook. And I think it actually may change some of your opinions who started today saying, well, I feel very negative about money. You might find that you don't feel as negative about it once you've gone through those exercises. And then finally, think about the strategies we talked about today. Go back through the slides. If there's any in the chat that I missed, focus on some of those strategies that are going to help you stay on your goal, avoid the outside influences that are taking you away from what you want to accomplish. And then with that, I will say, here's, if you find yourself and you're trying to accomplish a goal and you find yourself with a legal issue, a hurdle, and you're looking for some more guidance in terms of what your options are, because it's hard to make a goal or map out a plan if you don't know what all your options are. We're happy to take your calls. This is our contact information at the bottom of the screen. These are a lot of the issues that we work on, but really any financial issue where there's a legal aspect is probably something that we work on. And we're happy to help you work through that. And I also encourage you, if there's a particular one of these issues that you're really focused on, maybe credit specific or debt specific, I know that we have a lot of trainings coming up, so I encourage all of you to also participate in future trainings. And I know I will probably hear from many of you or see you in future trainings, and I really look forward to it. And I thank you for your time in spending your morning with me.
Thank you so much, Gina. This was really great. I think this will be an awesome training to have on our website. We will post it on our YouTube channel, and we'll send everyone that's on this training a link to that YouTube channel, along with the other resources that we've put here. Someone is asking a couple of questions. One is about, does HERA provide services only in Alameda County?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, no, we serve the entire state. Thank you for asking, not just Alameda County.
Great. That's good. And they're a wonderful resource. So thank you, everyone. If there's no other questions, we've got a couple more minutes, but I see everyone saying thank you. And we appreciate you all being here. And we look forward to seeing you at another training real soon. And as I typically do, I want to invite you to click the little leave button in the bottom right-hand corner. And Gina and Freddie and myself and Leah are going to hang back for a minute to make sure that we've got all the resources and things to send to you. So we thank you so much for your time today, for spending your morning with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.